Hi class, I hope you're all doing well. Today's lesson is on 4.3, dealing with credit cards. So thus far we've discussed um, looking at different financial institutions and the types of accounts that they have. Then we talked about keeping track of our finances. And now today we're kind of jumping back to similar ideas from 4.1 in that we're talking about credit cards and we're looking at different financial institutions and seeing what types of credit cards that they have to offer. Today, I've already written out all of the answers just for efficiency, and it would make the lesson flow a little bit better. So all the answers are already written out for us. I won't be going through them as I talk. I'll just be explaining what I've written down. But as always, if the font is too small or if you want to view this at another time, I have provided the answer key on D2L, so you can always go back and look there. Warm-up should have been completed independently before you began viewing this video. So we're going to start down here at using credit cards. Question number 1 says, work with a classmate or in a group. Brainstorm and list the names of as many different credit cards as possible. So of course we are unable to brainstorm in groups, but I have provided some options here. So I've broken this up into credit card companies and the names of different credit cards. Now, if I'm not sure if any of you are 18, but if you are 18, you are eligible to get a credit card. Therefore, you may already have a credit card. If not you, you might be a cashier and you might already be aware of some of the different credit card companies that your store or company allow for payment. Or maybe your caregiver, a parent, a friend, a family member, they have a credit card. So you might be used to hearing the names such as Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. Those are 3 common credit card companies that a lot of banks work with to create credit cards for. Now, not every company or store allows you to pay with an American Express credit card. And the reason for that is that store has to pay a really large fee to have American Express be used. So to avoid paying those fees, they just don't accept American Express altogether. Now, some examples of credit cards are TD TrueLine Gold MasterCard. So TD Bank has a credit card. It's a MasterCard, and they called it the TrueLine Gold. Another type of credit card, if you were to research and look into it and look through the different banking institutions and their websites, is the BMO Cashback MasterCard. So this is a credit card from the MasterCard company. Another type of credit card is the CIBC Dividend Visa Infinite card. So this is a Visa credit card. And lastly, the American Express Cobalt card, colloquially or commonly known as, a black card, American Express black card. So we're going to discuss 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages of using a credit card. So let's start with the advantages. First, a lot of credit cards give you rewards. What that means is when you make a purchase, usually you'll get some sort of point or reward that you could use towards your bank's reward program. For example, I'm with RBC and my credit card gives me the option of getting, I think it's 1 point for every $2 purchase. So I collect and accumulate all these points. And then when I have enough points, I go onto the RBC Rewards Points app and I can see the different types of products and purchases that they have that I could use my points towards. I want an Apple Watch, but I need to collect, I think it's 100,000 points or something like that. So I have a long way to go, but the idea is you can get some sort of product using the points that you've collected from your Visa card or your credit card. So that's one advantage. Another advantage is convenience. Credit cards are very, very, very convenient. So much so that the convenience can also be a disadvantage in itself, which we'll talk about shortly. So the point of a credit card is the bank is loaning you money that you don't have. So usually they put a limit on the amount of money they give you. So if it's a $5,000 credit limit, a $5,000 credit limit, And that means the bank is giving you $5,000 to spend, even if you don't have $5,000 in your bank account. And then each month when you get your statement, you pay back the amount that you've used. So it's convenient because you have borrowed money that you can just spend at your fingertips, right? If you want to purchase some sort of product online, but you don't have that amount in your checking account, well, you can just use your credit card. It's convenient, it's right there. And then you can pay back that amount at a later date. A third advantage is credit building. So what this basically means is every time you get your credit card statement and you pay it back and you pay it back on time, um, you start to build credit and you have this credit score. And if you are able to pay back your credit card on time and you don't miss a payment or you don't have to you're not in debt, which means you don't owe any money, that looks really good. So in the future, when you want to maybe take out a mortgage or if you need a loan to pay for school, the bank is going to see that you've already started to build credit through your credit card, and they're going to say, hey, this person is really good at paying back their bills. Let's give them that loan. Let's allow them to have a mortgage, and so on and so forth. So now let's talk about the disadvantages. Connected to the idea of convenience is that it's very easy to overspend when you have a credit card. Why? Because it's not your money, it's money that's being lent to you. So you tap, you purchase, you make that payment, and next thing you know, you've spent way too much, and now you have to pay all that money back. So you have to be very, very, very strategic with the way you use your credit card. Another disadvantage is the high interest rates. Now, the reason we have interest on credit cards is because you are being lent money. So the way that the banks kind of encourage you to pay back the money is by instilling these interest rates, right? If you don't pay back the money when you're supposed to give the money back, well, then they're going to start charging you extra on top of that. I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to pay extra money on top of something I'm already paying for. So I'm going to pay my Visa bill or my credit card bill on time. I'm going to pay back what I need to pay back when it's supposed to be paid back, so I can avoid paying extra on top of that. The thing is, banks charge very high interest rates. So what that means is the amount of money that you owe, if you don't pay it back on time, you're going to have to pay an extra higher amount on top of that. And this is one of the reasons why, some people don't get credit cards. It's because they don't like those high interest rates. It was one of the reasons that my father kind of deterred me and steered me away from getting a credit card. He said, well, if you don't pay it on time, you're going to have high interest rates. And I kept telling him, don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll pay everything on time. And I have so far. But it is a concern to keep in the back of your mind. Lastly, another disadvantage of credit cards is that the terms can be very confusing. Terms like interest, for example, and then just the terms and the policies and the agreements that come along with using the credit card. They can be very hard to understand, very hard to follow, especially when it comes to, understanding interest rates and what you could be charged extra for. So my advice would be, before you get a credit card, talk to a financial advisor and get them to break it down into, terms that someone like you and I could understand, someone who doesn't have any expertise in finance or in business, just a regular individual who wants to purchase a credit card. How can a financial advisor explain those terms to people like us? Alrighty, so we're going to move on to question number 3. And this was part of your Minds On activity. It says, research at least 3 different credit cards to collect the following information. So if I've already written them all down here, like the first video, I'm going to have the second screen up with the websites to show you how to read through those credit cards. So the first one I found on RBC. It's the RBC Rewards Plus Visa. This is the credit card that I have, so I'm very familiar with it. So I'm just going to go click here and press view all details. Okay, So the annual fee for the credit card is $0. So it's free. We don't have to pay a fee every year for having this credit card. The annual interest rate charged is this one right here, 19.99%. So every year, the interest rate is 19.99%. So that means whatever your balance is, if you don't pay it back on time, they're charging you an extra 19.99% of your total balance. Now, if we look here, there's two different interest rates. The one we're concerned with is the purchase interest rate. So whenever you're making a purchase and you don't pay it back on time, this is what you're being charged interest on, 19.99%. Cash advance rate is something else, and that's if you have to take out cash, they charge you interest on that. But what we're more concerned with is the purchase interest rate. Now, to calculate the approximate interest charged in 1 month on a $1,000 balance, we would have to do 1,000 times their interest rate divided by 12. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. So 1,000 times 19.99%. Remember, we changed percent to a decimal, so that becomes 0.1999. And then we divide that by 12. So 1,000 times 0.1999 is $199.90. Divide that by 12, we get $16.66. So the interest charged per month would be about $16.66 if the balance in your account was $1,000. Okay, the next credit card I want to talk about is the TD Cashback Infinite Visa card. So this is a Visa card like the other one. This is from TD. The annual fee for this one is $120. So each year you have to pay $120. For a student, I wouldn't start here with this type of credit card. You would probably want to go and find a credit card that doesn't have an annual fee. But as you get older and you make more income, then your Visa card, it's okay to have an annual fee on your Visa card. And you'll notice where there's an annual fee, there's usually a condition on the amount of money you make. And we'll talk about that later. Now, again, we see the two different interest rates. We're only interested in the interest rate for the purchases. So here the interest rate is 20.99%, so a little bit higher than the RBC one. And now to calculate the approximate interest for 1 month on a $1,000 balance, we follow the same procedure and we get $17.49. So if you had $1,000 in your bank account, or sorry, if you had $1,000 balance on your credit card, the interest you would have to pay on top of that each month would be $17.49. Now let's take a look at the American Express card. And there's a lot of hype around American Express because first of all, they have pretty expensive annual fees as the card colors go up. And also there's a lot of perks that you get with being an American Express member. A lot of people I find when I'm working like to flex their American Express card and kind of show it off. And the reason for that being is because, it indicates or signals some sort of wealth because of the fact that these cards are pretty expensive to have annually. So in a way, it shows off the wealth that the individual has. But that's not to say that an average individual can't have an American Express. They absolutely can. But they would probably have an American Express with one of the annual fees being less. So the American Express Cobalt card, which is also known as the Black card, the annual fee, well, here they tell us what the monthly fee is. So they say it's $10 per month. And we know there's 12 months in a year. So if we want to know how much they're paying annually for that credit card, well, we would have to do 10 times 12, which is $120. So every year they're paying $120 for that card. The annual interest rate is 19.99% on purchases, just like the Visa from RBC. And because the calculations will be the same as the first calculations we did, we don't have to do them again. We know it would be $16.66 per month. And lastly, we have the Scotiabank Momentum MasterCard. So this one here is a MasterCard. The others were Visas, and one of them was American Express. So the annual fee is $0. It's free. It says no annual fee. The interest rate, right up here, it says 19.99%. So the interest rate is 19.99%. And again, the calculation is the same as the American Express and the RBC Visa. Okay, using these same 4 credit cards, we're going to talk about the incentive or reward programs that these cards have to offer. And we kind of discussed that in the advantages part of using credit cards. So we'll look into it in more detail now. So the RBC Rewards Plus Visa, the way the rewards work, or the description of the reward program, is that you can earn 1 RBC reward point for every $1 spent on gas, groceries, and drugstore purchases. So anytime you spend money on gas, groceries, or drugstore purchases, you get 1 RBC reward point. Now, for every other type of purchase, so say it's a clothing purchase, or you make a deposit, or you buy candy, you will get 1 RBC reward for every $2 spent. Okay, so then those rewards accumulate. You can see how many you have, and if you have enough to make towards a purchase of some item that you would want to buy. Like I said, I want to get an Apple Watch. I am ways away from having enough points to make a purchase on that Apple Watch. But the idea is, instead of paying money to get that Apple Watch, I can use these points to get that Apple Watch. So basically what's here is written in this little cell of the chart here. I know it's a little bit small to read. Like I mentioned before, please feel free to upload the answer key so you can see it a little bit bigger. Now, conditions. Is there any sort of minimum income I need to have, or is there any annual fee that I have to pay in order to have this credit card? No, I don't have to have a minimum income. I can have whatever amount in my bank account to be able to apply for this credit card, and there is no annual fee. So let's take a look at the TD Cashback Visa Infinite card. So the rewards are right here. You can earn 3% in cashback dollars on eligible grocery purchases and gas purchases. So similar to the RBC, except in this case, you get cashback dollars. So the idea is you would get, money back on these purchases. So whatever the amount for the gas was or the groceries were, 3% of that is what you get back. And then for all other purchases, you get 1% back in cashback dollars. Now, conditions. Where are the conditions? It says right here. So in order to be able to apply for this credit card, you have to have either $60,000 in personal income, or as a household, $100,000. Okay, so in order to be able to get this credit card, you have to satisfy these requirements here. So there are conditions that determine whether or not you are able to apply for this credit card. If we go to the American Express Cobalt card, there are some really great rewards here. So for stores or restaurants that are in partnership with American Express, you would get 5 times the points on food and drink for those restaurants and food delivery places that are in partnership with American Express. You get 2 times the point on travel and transit, 1 time the point on everything else, every other purchase. So there is a really great reward program in place with American Express. Another really important or cool feature about American Express, if we look here, if we look at the perks, check out some of the perks. Oh, not there, sorry. Not sure where it went, but if you want, you can look through the website after. American Express gives its users access to a lot of events. So if you ever went to a sports game or a concert, you might notice, especially at the Scotiabank Arena, there's like a little section for American Express card holders. If you have one of those credit cards, you have the opportunity to live out that fan experience in a designated sort of VIP-like section. Another really cool thing about American Express is that you get pre-sale for concerts and events. So if you've ever purchased a concert ticket or a sporting ticket on Ticketmaster, there's always a pre-sale for American Express card holders. And I was always jealous of those people because they didn't have to worry about uh, fearing whether or not they would be able to get Justin Bieber tickets. They would get them because they had the pre-sale opportunity. The thing is, though, in order to receive all of these rewards, you have to spend at least $500 on your card. So that is a condition upon receiving the incentives and rewards of this credit card program. Lastly, let's take a look at the Scotiabank Momentum MasterCard credit card. So here, one of the rewards you have in place is that you get 1% cash back on groceries, gas, and drugstore purchases, similar to the RBC Visa and the TD Cashback Visa. And there are no conditions for using this card. You can have whatever amount of money in your bank account and you can apply for this credit card. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to make this screen smaller and open up this a little bit larger so we can go through the next section together. Okay, go back, oops, sorry, my apologies, there we go. Okay, so we talked about interest. And remember, often interest is charged only on overdue credit card balances. So that means if you don't pay your credit card balance on the day you're supposed to pay it by, then that's when interest will start to be charged. Keep in mind, though, that interest is charged from the date of purchase, not the due date of the payment. So if you made a purchase on September 2nd and your Visa statement was due September 15th, but you pay it late, your interest is going to start to be charged from September 2nd, not September 15th. It's from the day you made the purchase. You have to be very mindful of that because that's where credit card companies get you. Now, if a credit card user always pays the bill, the entire bill, on or before the due date, usually you don't have to pay interest. You're not using the credit card at any cost. So that's why it's really, really, really important to pay your credit card off as soon as you make the purchase. I would recommend and highly suggest don't make a credit card purchase if you don't have the money in your bank account to pay it off right after. That's just my philosophy, because then if you're going to run into the problem of being in debt, you're not going to have the money to pay for the amount that you just used your credit card for. So always make sure you have the amount in your bank account so you can pay it off right away. Question 5 says, Bob paid $648.93 for car repairs last month with his credit card. A portion of Bob's latest credit card statement is shown below. So here in this box, we can see a portion of his credit card statement. Question A says, how much interest was Bob charged last month? So if we look over here, his balance for last month, his previous balance was $431.16. He made a payment for the same amount. His overdue balance was $0, so he didn't have to pay any extra money because he paid it on time. And his interest was $0. Why? Why was his interest $0? Well, he paid his bill on time, so he didn't collect any interest. Therefore, the answer for A is $0. And why? Well, Bob paid his entire balance on time. Because he paid his balance on time, he avoided interest charges. B asks, how much does Bob currently owe? So his new balance is highlighted in yellow. That's how much he has to pay for this statement. So that is a total of $648.93. Question C asks, if Bob's available credit is $4,351.07, what is his total spending limit on his credit card? Okay, so the way we figure this out is we take the available amount or the available credit, so how much money he has left to spend, and we add the amount of money he has to pay back. And in total, that's going to tell us how much money he has or what the limit is of his credit card. So he has $4,351.07 left in available credit, and he has to pay $648.93. That's how much he's used up. So if we add those two numbers together, we get $5,000. So that means his credit limit is $5,000. Every month, he's allowed to use up to $5,000. So far, he's used $648.93 of that $5,000, and he has $4,351.07 left to spend or available. Doesn't mean he should go and use it all up, but it's there. Question D says, based on the rate shown, how often is interest collected on unpaid balances? So if we go to our interest rate in our little chart here, and we go to this rates, it says 0.05178% per day. So interest is being charged daily if Bob does not pay his amount on the day he's supposed to pay it by. So now we're going to make some calculations. Question E says Bob pays for the car repairs on on October 15th. Calculate the interest that Bob will be charged if he is 1 day late with his next payment. So his payment is due on October 30th. If he makes his payment 1 day later, which is October 31st, how much interest will he be charged? We're just interested in finding the interest. Remember though, interest is charged from the date of purchase. So if he paid for the car repair on October 15th, and then he pays the statement on October 31st, which is 1 day after it's due, how many days have passed from October 15th to October 31st? Well, that's 16 days. So he's going to be charged interest for 16 days. So what is that new interest amount? Well, if we take our interest rate per day, which is 0.05178%, and multiply it by the number of days we're being charged interest for, which is 16 days, we get 0.82848%. And that is basically the amount of interest that Bob has to pay. He has to pay 0.82848% interest on his balance. Okay, so next we need to figure out what 0.82848% of our balance is, and that will give us the amount of interest that we have to pay. So we're taking our balance, which is $648.93, and we're going to multiply it by our new interest. But remember, when we're working with interest and percents, we have to change the percent to a decimal. So 0.82848% is 0.00828848. When you multiply that with $648.93, you get about $5.38. So on top of the $648.93 he has to pay for his balance, he also has to pay an additional $5.38 in interest. Okay, so see how you have to pay this extra amount now because you didn't pay your balance on time, and see how they get you because they're charging interest from the date of purchase and not from the date that the payment is due. So now instead of paying, a 1 day interest rate because he was 1 day late, he has to pay a 16-day interest rate because from October 15th to October 31st, 16 days have passed. So again, very, very, very important that you pay your Visa or credit card bill on the day it's due or before. Question F asks, if Bob makes only the minimum payment this month, what will his unpaid balance be? So a minimum payment is a minimum amount that you have to pay on your credit card bill to avoid any sort of negative repercussions associated with not paying your bills. So in a way, it exempts you from having bad credit score, but it does not exempt you from paying interest. So even if you do pay the minimum balance, you do still collect interest and you still will be charged interest on that balance, okay? It just will exempt you from having a bad credit score because at least you're paying some sort of amount on the due date. So the minimum balance or the minimum amount that you can pay on the due date is $10. So let's say Bob just pays the minimum amount on the due date. So we would have to do $648.93, which is the balance. That's how much he owes the credit card company. And we subtract the $10 minimum. Well, now his new balance will be $638.93. So that's still how much he has left to pay. But because he didn't pay that full amount on the day it was due, he will be charged interest on this new unpaid balance of $638.93. So question G is asking us to calculate the interest rate charged for 1 day on this unpaid balance. So we know that the interest rate per day is 0.05178%. So we need to figure out what 0.05178% of $638.93 is. So we change the percent to a decimal, as we can see here. We multiply it by that new unpaid balance of $638.93, and we get about 33 cents. So he's going to have to pay 33 cents interest per day, depending on how many days pass before he pays his balance. So if we go to H, it says if the interest charge is calculated like this for a 30-day month, how much interest would Bob be charged? Okay, so we know that for 1 day, he'll have to pay an extra 33 cents. So imagine he has to pay an extra 33 cents for 30 days because that's how long he goes without paying the balance. So we would take 33 cents and multiply that by 30, and it gives us $9.93. So on top of that $638 balance, he now has to pay an additional $9.93. And lastly, question I says, Bob makes no other purchases. Assume he pays the minimum amount on time. So he pays that $10 by the due date. What will Bob's credit card balance be the next time he receives a statement? So the way we would calculate his balance for the next statement would be his unpaid balance from this statement plus the interest he collected from not paying that statement. So the unpaid balance from our current statement is $638.93. The interest he collected from not paying that amount was $9.93. So add those two amounts together and we get $648.86. So his next Visa statement, assuming he didn't make any other purchases, this will be his amount that he has to pay. Now, if he chooses to pay the minimum balance, then he's going to have to go through the whole process again of collecting interest on top of that number. So he would be collecting interest on top of interest. And then the next statement, if he chooses only to pay the minimum balance, he's going to be paying interest on top of interest on top of interest. So it collects and it accumulates, and that's how banks make money. So it's so important that you pay the amount on or before the due date so you're not constantly accumulating more and more interest. Okay, so I'm going to go back to splitting my screen. So just give me a second to set this up. Alrighty. So question number 6 says, many retailers offer credit cards to their customers. Research the features of a credit card from each type of retailer. So different retailers, different stores have their own type of credit card. A department store like the Hudson's Bay, they have their own type of credit card, and it's just called the Hudson's Bay MasterCard. I think Walmart has their own credit card as well, but the idea is if you apply for a credit card from that retailer, you usually reap the benefits of perks and exclusive deals from that retailer. So some of the key features of the Hudson's Bay MasterCard is that you earn up to 4 times the points for every dollar you spend at Hudson's Bay. So if you make a purchase at the Hudson's Bay, for every dollar you spend, you get 4 points. And over time, the more points you have, you can redeem that towards something else. And then everywhere else, every other purchase you make, you get 2 points for every dollar. And there's also, of course, exclusive access to savings events, deals that Hudson's Bay has to offer right here. And you can, the points that you collect, you can redeem towards purchases at Hudson's Bay. Question B says furniture or appliance stores. Well, IKEA has their own type of credit card. And this was news to me. I didn't know that IKEA had their own type of credit card. So when I was researching and I found this, I was like, wow, that's very interesting. So this is the IKEA Family Visa card. Some of the key features is that you get 5% back in rewards on IKEA purchases. So for every purchase that you make at IKEA, you get 5% of it back in rewards that you can later redeem on other purchases. And then for all other purchases outside of IKEA, you get 1% back in rewards. A gasoline retailer, well, Costco is an example of that one. Costco does have a gas station at their big box stores. So if you were to get the Costco Anywhere Visa card by city, some of the rewards here is that you get 4% back on gas, you get 3% back on restaurants and travel, 2% back on purchases from Costco and Costco.com, and 1% on all other purchases outside of Costco. So you always get some sort of reward or amount back that you can use and redeem towards future purchases. And lastly, an electronic retailer. Well, Amazon has their own MasterCard. Some of the perks are there is no annual fee, so you don't have to pay an amount for having that. You get 2.5% back at Amazon.ca and Whole Foods. So whenever you make an Amazon.ca purchase, 2.5% of it you get back in rewards, which again can be used for a later purchase or redeemed on a later purchase. And then for all other purchases outside of Amazon.com or .ca, you get 1% back on the purchase, which can then be used for other purchases in the future. So that brings us to the end of the lesson. I hope this was informative. It really is super important that you understand how to work with credit cards, because in the future, you will probably have your own credit card. So just remember, the main takeaway is that be super mindful of interest charges and remember to pay the credit card balance on the due date to avoid ridiculous amounts of charged interest. I'll leave you with the check your understanding to complete that on your own. Again, look at the answer key to compare your answers and to make sure that you have a good understanding of what we discussed today. Please don't forget to complete the 4.3 quiz. And if you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to ask. I will be available on Thursday via Zoom to answer any questions. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Have a wonderful day and take care.